Hello there. Back on the tablet to record this video rather than my phone because it's probably going to be quite a long one and longer than my phone storage will allow. So I apologise for the decrease in picture quality again. But today, Peter Davison. Yes, even though I'm dressed up as Tom Baker because I'm going to a fancy dress party later tonight and I want to get used to wearing a scarf. It's the Fifth Doctor. There he is. Happy, bland, pleasant open face, not bland. Sorry, Peter Davis, that's getting your Terrence Dicks catchphrase wrong there. The Fifth Doctor, of course, probably the first of the controversial Doctors. Basically, for many people, the 1980s is where Doctor Who began to go badly wrong. Something that was pretty much supported and emphasised by the BBC up until about 10 years ago, as I discussed slightly in my last video. For the 40th anniversary, it was about everything up to Tom Baker, and after that, it was treated with a sort of embarrassment, and Paul McGann was basically ignored by the 40th anniversary as well. More recently, though, there's been a bit of a renaissance, probably partly thanks to the likes of David Tennant and Stephen Moffat, having grown up with Peter Davison and being self-confessed fans of his, to the point of marrying his daughter in one of their cases. Good for you, David. You've achieved the ultimate fanboy's dream there. But, so it's been sort of reassessed, and sort of Pete Davison is now seen more as one of the good ones, really, than he has perhaps before, and he's tends to get cited as being the most influential of the modern series Doctors, which I'd say isn't really the case, apart from his relative youth. They're all tended to be younger now up until Capaldi. His style of performance actually isn't that much like Eccleston, Smith or Tennant's. They tend to play up the eccentricity and the look at me, I'm crazy a bit more, while he gives a more nuance, for want of a better word, performance. He's more of a straight-laced hero, if that makes any sense. Tends to have a dry wit rather than a manic insanity. Eric Saywood, of course, script editor, would talk in interviews about how he viewed the Doctor as basically being James Bond. Thankfully, that doesn't come across very much in the show itself, at least during the Davison era, but there is that more of the dry wit and the raised Roger Moore style eyebrow to Davison than there is to any of the other Doctors. The main thing about Davison is, especially coming to him right after finishing the Tom Baker era, is how much... what's the right... He's much more of an actor with a capital A than Tom Baker was by the end of his time. Tom Baker was a personality. He was just stood there being Tom Baker, as I talked about in the last video. Davison is acting. He's engaging with his other performers. He's working to the best of the production rather than making it about him. He will happily let the guest star be big and hammy and just come back with an appropriately timed reaction rather than try to upstage them. It's a genuine, proper performance which the show really hasn't had in the lead since Troughton. And obviously Davison, even though his Doctor isn't really very similar to Troughton's, they do tend to get bungled together because of the self-confessed influence of Troughton upon him from Davison himself. And that influence has exerted itself mainly in the fact he's putting far more effort into being a character than Baker and Pertwee. And frankly, after season 18, it makes a hugely refreshing change. Davison's first season, the way he interacts with his companions and his monsters and pitches his performance so well, I would say he's better in his first year than Tom Baker was in anything after City of Death. Truly engaging and fun performance. helped by his companions. The companions of Peter Davison era tend to get a lot of slack, mainly probably because of Andrick, and also the arguing and constant bickering. And there is this sort of odd thing about the Davison era that it often gets called like a soap opera. It was on twice a week. There are ongoing plots that carry on from story to story, especially in the first couple of years. It tends to drop off for season 21. But generally, it doesn't actually really feel like a soap opera, because obviously soap opera is about the characters and their emotional journeys. There's a bit of it with Tegan over the Marvel stuff, but even then, start with Visitation, it's not her dealing with what happened to her in Kinder, it's her providing a recap of what happened to her in Kinder, and then it doesn't really have any impact on the rest of the story. If the Davison era was really like a soap opera, what happened to Tegan in that with Kinder would have been a full-on story arc for the rest of that season of her dealing with it emotionally. Same goes in Nyssa. The master killed her father. Pretty much no follow-up of that at all. On the 2 times they meet, well, 3 times really, they meet again after, no, it is just 2. Oh, this is, see, if only I edited my videos. The 2 times they meet after she finds out about it. There's only the most tokenistic mentions of it. Adric suffers because obviously he almost comes in with a self-built-in story arc of growing up and maturing. There's pretty much no follow-through of that, so he's just a really annoying, acting like a 12-year-old, even though he's clearly Link's 18. I'm not actually sure how old Matthew Waterhouse was. He could be pushing 20 by the look of him. But, so there's a lot working against the companions. In fact, they're sort of set up within this soap environment, but it doesn't follow through in a soap opera style way. But I think Tegan is overall fantastic. Funny, spiky, smart, resourceful. The antagonism with the Doctor, especially in season 19, I quite like. She wants to go home. She calls him out on a lot of his crap. I can see why Peter Davison thought Nyssa was his best companion in that she was more nice, and he probably didn't want to have constant fighting and arguing, but frankly, the Tegan relationship is much more interesting and better played, and it sort of shows maybe it was a mistake to go with so many alien companions at once, because the writers really struggled with Andric and Nyssa. Sarah Sutton can do a lot to sort of overcome it, though she's stuck with being quite bland. Fortunately, Matthew Waterhouse can't. And it's no real surprise they wound up blowing him up, really. Even though, oddly, they were thinking of getting rid of Nyssa first, before Davison interjected. On the death of Andric, it's one of those big debates. Is it a genuine dramatic moment, or is it just a slightly lazy way of getting rid of a character nobody likes? And Earthshock, I would say, actually works really well. Yes, you're kind of glad to see the back of Andric, but they play the moment fairly. It's a proper, genuinely emotional moment. Everybody's reaction is back on the TARDIS, and the very last scene is well done. Sort of make it for all it's worth, and of course he's been in the programme for a year there, and for younger fans, and sort of really young ones, he's still one of the cast. If they've been watching regularly, presumably they could at least tolerate Andric, and I suppose if you were 8, you might even like him quite a lot. So, it would have been affected. It wasn't just everybody stood up and cheered when he died. I think it would have actually genuinely affected a lot of young kids, and I think it's very well done. But then you come to the problem of the next story. They spend about 30 seconds talking about the death of Andric, and then nothing. Up until he sees ghosts, and then it's nothing again. In fact, the only subsequent consequence of Andric's death is when Peter Davison regenerates, when he has his last words, and that almost feels slightly weirdly out of place, because it had no other impact on that incarnation at all. I think as one person's pointed out, Peter Davison's last words should really have been chameleon, because that's a strange one to hallucinate, considering how little they interacted. But the subsequent days of companions, after his initial trio, I really love Turlo. I think, again, we had that great opening story arc, where he got to be smart, intelligent, manipulative. He does. The writers have no idea what to do with him for his following year of the show, but Mark Strickson is good enough to make him hugely entertaining. You know, when he's foaming at the mouth, manically in front of us, that's huge fun. And he tends to make even the most dull and pedantic of lines hugely memorable, minus overplaying them deliciously. He can't do much with his completely absent role in the Five Doctors, but overall, love Turlo. Chameleon. Well, Chameleon brings us to one of the problems of the John Nathan Turner era, which is when people praise him, they often talk about how he was skilled at getting the show made and his production nonce, getting his bang for his book, but he would repeatedly and constantly make these bizarre and ridiculous decisions, like, oh, let's have a robot, let's not test it out properly first, oh shit, it doesn't really work, we kind of don't really know what to do with it now, stick it in a cupboard for a year like it's a Dinobot or something like that. And those sort of failings happen a lot during the Days of the era. Visual effects failures that should have been really obvious to everyone involved weren't going to work. But of course, very briefly, you have Perry. And with Peter Davison, I think Nicola Bryant again does a really good job. As with the others, she's often having to bat above her average in terms of how the scripts treat her. But she makes the material work. Even though she's written in quite a sort of whiny and potentially irritating way in both Planet of Fire and Caves, she makes more of the material. So there's always an engaging charm to her. The other main recurring cast member of those 3 years is, of course, the Master. And Anthony Ainley, again, does better with the material than it deserves a lot of the time. Yes, he's ridiculously over the top and camp in a way. Make John Sim at times go, whoa, that's a bit over the top and camp. But it's hugely fun. It's really, the Master is frequently so badly and nonsensically written during this era. It's pretty much any way you could have played it. Yes, I would have personally rather had a more Delgado-style Master who has the charm and humour that makes you think he's just having fun rather than actively trying to take over the world because he's insane. But sadly, we've not ever had that sort of Master again. It'd be really nice to get back to it. But if you're going to have a man Master, Ainley does it very well, and especially Planet of Fire, where he gets to wear a normal suit rather than his ridiculous penguin costume, where I guess we have a sense of menace and danger, and he actually makes the Chameleon Master feel different from the normal Master. Only problem with Master is most of his stories that he's in are really shit. Castrovalva would have been a decent way of writing him off, but Time Flight, why is he dressed up as a fat Asian man? Nobody knows. King's Demons, it's just an embarrassment for him, but you want to do something that insignificant. Five Doctors is actually a pretty decent show for him, where he's actually trying to do something nice for a change, and he's having to deal with the frustrations of nobody believing him. That's rather fun and well done. But other than that, it's he's struggling, but he's doing his best. Far stories go for Davison. Famously, of course, as the man himself said, if he'd had the stories in his third year, in his second year instead, he would have agreed to do a fourth year. That's what it means slightly too harsh. The good stuff is more spread out than that. But of course, famously, I believe it was during making the Time Flights when he had to decide if he was actually going to do a fourth year or not. So that was a story that really was going to make you leave the job, really. First season has a lot of good stuff in it. I like Castrovalva. I think it's probably the best Christopher Bimby scripts. A lot of nice, insane stuff, and it does the post-regeneration madness, weakness of the Doctor better than most stories do, because it does it in an interesting way, and he has sort of regained his inner strength, and it sort of challenges him directly in are you worthy of replacing Tom Baker's stakes, and he comes off well there. Force of Doomsday is harmless. Kinder, though, is very, very good, and that's sort of years ahead of its time, really. It's again, it's got that effects failure with a stake at the end, which again, JNT should have known that one would never work and never consider this, but it's such a brilliantly sophisticated script. I like The Visitation. It seems to be quite an unpopular story at the moment, I think because of all the trouble with Eric Saywood subsequently, but I think there's a lot of fun to be had in that. And people go, oh, it's just trying to be a typical Doctor Who story, but it had been years since Doctor Who had done anything like that. You know, Horror of Fang Rock, which was what, 4 or 5 years earlier, was the last one to do anything in Earth's past. And it's not so much rehashing old Doctor Who stories as bringing a style back to the show, and it does it quite well. I love the pterodactyls. I love how sarcastic and just generally fucked off with everything the pterodactyl leader is, and it's a good mask. And you know how the story's going to end with Great Father of London right from the off, but it still works well. Earthshock, no, Black Orchid, of course. See, that says a lot about Black Orchid, but I skipped over it there. Black Orchid, forgettable fluff, harmless enough. Interestingly, if you watch it with the DVD commentary, I tend to find every single criticism that Peter Davison has about that story is perfectly valid, but I still like it anyway. Earthshock, fairly straightforward script. Interestingly, Earthshock was a video I had as a kid. In fact, for years, the only two Peter Davison stories I had seen was Earthshock and Caves of Randazani. So I just thought that every Peter Davison story had caves and androids and a line about fluorescent rocks to explain why it's not completely dark in the caves. But Earthshock itself, people tend not to like that one as well now, probably because of Saywood. Because perhaps of the direction of the violence and the mercenary aspects is a side of how the show's going to go wrong a couple of years later. But I think it's hugely energetic fun. I think the Cybermen look great. The direction, I think it is made by Peter Grimwade's how he directs it. It's watching the show in order. There is no Doctor Who story shot like Earthshock before that. It is the biggest innovation in the style of the show since Douglas Camfield worked on it. The editing, the shots, the action scenes that actually work. There'd been nothing like that in the show up to that point. It looks a million miles away from any other story in season 19. And there's really only one other story in the entire Davison era that challenges it. It's sort of innovation that should have set a new style for the show. And it didn't. Even scripts that were trying to be like Earthshock never quite managed it. I guess even when Grimwade was directing, subsequently he couldn't get the time to do it as well. And Earthshock really works. So yes, Beryl Reid is slightly miscast, but other than that, I would say it's a fun story. And it makes more sense for people. People often go, oh, the Cybermen, they had a bomb and they were going to crash a ship into the planet. Oh, isn't that just silly? Pay attention to the dialogue. The bomb would have gone off and then the ship would have delivered the Cybermen army to Earth to take care of any survivors. Turning the ship into a bomb was their response to the Doctor destroying the bomb. It's a plan B, a bit of improvisation. That they're basically going to sacrifice all the Cybermen on the ship. Now, that was never part of their original plan, so give it a bit of credit there. Pay attention to what the story is actually saying. But then you get Time Flies, which is such a spectacular disaster. You really don't know what anyone was thinking. You could have done something interesting with Concorde, you could have had Heathrow, something akin to the Faceless Ones, but it just all falls apart. As does Arc of Infinity. Again, a monster, but you gotta wonder what anybody was thinking about. you've got you've got a brilliant actor like Michael Gough, and you have him having to do hand acting for the first 3 episodes in this most bizarre way, where because they're trying to make you think, who could the traitor be? You know it's Michael Gough straight away. But in order to sort of hide it, he's having to do very emphatic hand acting to emphasise his every emotion. It looks ludicrous. Omega has a great costume, and I think Ian Collier does a better job than Stephen Ford did in the original. But you sit there thinking, well, the show has a Resident Evil Time Lord. Do you need to revisit another one? Just do a Master Story. Gallifrey looks terrible, and cheap and nasty, and the Time Lords aren't interesting. Other than a decent performance of Peter Davison when Omega takes his form, pretty much a disaster. Snake Dance, another great story, and has a brilliant performance of Martin Clunes that is unfairly used to take the piss out of him on before they were famous shows, just because of his ludicrous costume that sort of peaks in part 4 when he wears a white dress and a turban. But he's just brilliant. You can see why he went on to be such a successful actor. And it almost makes you feel as if he's a lot of his performances subsequently sort of wasted a great talent on sitcoms and Sunday evening sweet dramas. He deserves to have sort of one big meaty role in something else. The Black Guardian trilogy, I like more than Undead. All that fuss people have spent arguing about unit continuity over the years has sort of been shot down now by the fact we have a Web of Fear back, and that it's firmly set in 1968, or is it 8 or 7. It's just very intelligent and a very sophisticated use of time travel, and Nicholas Courtney is brilliant as a Brigadier, and that is one of those, of all the things brought back from the past in season 20, the Brigadier is the most worthwhile, and it's done in the most interesting way. And he was such a big part of the show as well. It's not just bringing back an old monster who was in it twice 10 years ago. You're bringing back a main character, and it's done very well. And just a beautiful little story. Terminus, dull. And slightly creepy in the whole having Sarah Sutton take her clothes off stakes. Not a very good exit story for her. And sort of a story where the Doctor has to save the entire universe should be more interesting than that. Enlightenment, great, thoughtful, intelligent, lovely little story. Probably could have done without the Guardians, to be honest, but a very ridiculous headwear. But yeah, overall, pretty good conclusion to that trilogy. It would have made a great end to the season, but then we get the King's Demons, which what is? See, I sort of I got overconfident with what Anthony Ainley could do in that. He was fooled a lot of people in Castrovalva with his Portreeve disguise. And that is a lovely performance by him in that story that genuinely feels like a different character and shows he has much more range than perhaps he's often given credit. But all the other disguises he did after that, the bloody Khalid, and said, Sanjay, this time! Oh, ho, 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 ho. Just awful, and shoots down what is otherwise a fairly harmless 50 minutes of television. 5 Doctors, immense fun, and it's great to have Terence Dicks back on writing. He's probably one author who could have pulled that off. Yes, it would have been nice to have Tom Baker in there properly, perhaps instead of having a William Hartnell substitute. But it's still just a tremendously good story, and it shows you how good Peter Davison is, because when you've got a grandstanding John Pertwee and effortlessly singing Patrick Troughton, it would have been very easy for him to get completely lost in there, like Pertwee did opposite Troughton in the 3 Doctors. But he said Davison holds his own, helped by the fact he actually gets the proper plot of a story by going to Gallifrey and getting to solve a mystery. It's just very nicely done, very good fun, and of course was the last time Doctor Who was a big thing on British television. After that, it's really the beginning of the end. So it's a huge, huge milestone in more ways than one. Season 21, Warriors of Deep. A lot of people like the script as will sort of defend it over production values. To be honest, I think the script's fairly terrible. For America, people say, oh, because of the election, I have to get it ready quickly, but there is absolutely no way on earth America would have ever worked. And John David Turner, again, should have known that. He should never have signed off on doing a monster like that. He was there when Arato failed in The Creature from the Pit. And again, what was anybody thinking? You were not going to get anything other than a pantomime horse. It might have been a slightly better made pantomime horse if they'd had the proper amount of time, but it would have never been anything other than crap. And so many odd performances in there. Ingrid Pitt doing a Kung Fu Kit, Ian McCulloch, a normally a brilliant actor. He was so good at Survivors. He clearly has no idea what he's doing. Everybody else is bland. It's trying to be a tragedy, but there's nobody you care about whether you all get killed. And you've got that terrible line about the gas at the start that gives away how the story's going to end. And other than the set, the set's nice. Silurian and Silurian costumes are okay. Other than that, pretty much a total write-off. Awakening, though, is so good. It's probably the most underappreciated Peter Davison story. Fantastic, does 50 minutes really well. Lots of nice ideas, sort of doing people in period costume in the present day. The historical reenactment, it always seems like a attack on the sort of previous studio historicals that sort of picked famous moments from history and treated it like a theme park. This obviously seems to be sending that up, and it does it really well. And the second Survivors lead actor in a row, so guest star, Dennis Leal, he's brilliant in it. Fantastic performance, real little gem. Frontios is another very good story, probably slightly underappreciated. The tractators don't really work, and you forgive that for trying that one, but though really, J&T should have thought twice before doing Insect Monsters again, just a few stories later. But it has a nice, gritty, dark feel to it, some lovely performances. A fantastic Foamy for Mark Strickson. Really stands up very well. Resurrection of Daleks, I quite like it. Again, a lot of people don't. To be honest, I think when people sort of have a go at Eric Sayward, the big problems with his stuff is in the Colin Baker era. Resurrection is remorselessly bleak, but it's got punk to it. Possibly unintentionally, because of course it seemingly wasn't that heavily rewritten when it was made Tegan's last story. So perhaps this would have worked if it had been at the end of season 20 as originally planned. But it's there's a commentary on the increasing violence in the show, and it's challenging the Doctor's morality and ethics. How can he, by any reasonable standards, not be a violent man when the universe is so violent? How can he not kill Davros when killing Davros could save billions? And it challenges him and finds him wanting, and the whole story is beautifully undercut by Tegan saying she's had enough. Might have went better if it had come so soon after Warriors of the Deep, where everybody gets killed as well. Which makes the decision seem slightly arbitrary, but that last scene is brilliantly played. Perfectly pays off the increasing violence of the Davison era and sets up his last story, and where it will address those issues head on in a very final way. Before that, we've got Planet of Fire. Harmless enough. Good performance by Peter Wingard. Yes, Perry in the bikini looks lovely, but that is... It's odd because it's a female director, Fiona Cumming, but such a really lecherous shot like that would get through. It's one of the single most pervy moments in the whole of the original run of Doctor Who. I have a new series as well. And it makes you feel slightly dirty afterwards. So yeah, it's a sort of harmless story. It would have been a perfect moment to write out the Master permanently for the classic series. Very sadly, he'll keep coming back. But then you get Kay's Ramazani, which up until earlier this year, when Day of the Doctor won the poll for the 50th anniversary, Caves was officially the best Doctor Who story of all time ever. And it really is. It is. Now, for me, it's a toss-up between that and City of Death, which you couldn't get two more different stories, really. But again, it's bleak. There's a point to it. It's this lovely idea of making the Doctor a catalyst for all these horrible events where all he's trying to do is survive them. And by trying to survive them, he makes everything worse. And again, the challenge, as the question asked by Resurrection of Daleks was, how can the Doctor survive in the new, as a character, in a more violent and deadly world of the 80s? And Case Ramazani has that perfect answer. He is valid as a character because while everybody else is being violent and destroying everything around him, he cares about trying to save one person. And he's willing to do anything to achieve that, and he'll sacrifice himself, and if that saves one person, that makes it worth it. And that should have been a defining moment for 82. That should have instantly set the series off in a new direction. But then we're back to the idea that probably Eric Saward hadn't really planned any of this as script editor, because, as I'll discuss in my next video, the Colin Baker era ignores all of that and just carries on, if anything, well, explores the same ideas in a far, far worse way, which is such a pity, because Caves could have been a capstone to all that, and giving the show a new, exciting, fresh lease of life afterwards. But overall, yep, Hosting goes out on the best story possibly. Has for me what's best for Generation of the entire series as well. Magma Beast is shit. But, I would say even the actor playing the Magma Beast is giving the best possible Magma Beast performance, and everybody else is equally being brilliant. It's just a shame we have the twin dilemma the week after, but that's going to be a conversation for another time. I suppose, having mentioned him a few times during the video, we should talk briefly about Eric Saward, where things went wrong there. Should he be made script editor? Well, at first I think there could potentially be better options, but considering Visitation worked, suggesting a popular direction the show could go in, I can sort of see why he'd be top of the list. And I think he gets some slightly unfair criticism, much like JNT himself does, in that people will blame anything bad in scripts on Saward, but anything good they'll say happened in spite of Saward. Which, he's a script editor, everything good and bad is down to him. He did rewrite a lot of Kinder, there's a lot of him in Case Ramazani. Of course, famously put the joke about Praxis, which is the name of his typewriter, almost as a, hey, I am actually working on the good scripts as well statement. Though, unfortunately, what that basically means, line of dialogue means, is that Doctor Who is allergic to Eric Saward's typewriter. Something will become, it's almost prophetic about what would happen in the next couple of years. But equally, I think he did a lot of good stuff. I think he had a slightly odd idea of what the character of the Doctor is. I mean, that does work out by Caves. As I said, the Doctor waves guns about more in Eric Saward stories than he does at any other point in the show's history. I think sort of 98% of the times the Doctor holds a gun in the original series is in stuff written by Saward. And if that feels slightly uncomfortable, famously, of course, that photo of him from Earthshock where he's toting a gun that made the cover of the novelisation sort of sums up why that looks strange, especially Peter Davison, who's almost the opposite of the sort of Doctor, the gun-toting action hero, pertwee style Doctor, who could perhaps have got away with that a bit more. He also struggles quite badly to get fresh talent into the show at a point where it's abandoned its previous writers. Christopher Bailey is really the only huge success of the new writers who came back more than once. There's a couple of new one-offs like Barbara Clegg, who you wonder why they didn't do more. Generally, he struggles there. And he says he had a hard time getting new writers, but a few years later, oh, bloody hell, I can't remember his name. Script editor of Admiral Cartmel. Total brain fart there. He worked harder at that and did get new, fresh writers and new, fresh selection for the show. So it's hard to say we're having an excuse there. And of course, it's falling out with JNT, which is about to reach boiling point, and will effectively destroy the show in the Colin Baker era. Much like JNT himself, and I'll talk more about JNT in the Colin Baker video, Saward should have left with Peter Davison, and he would have been much better remembered than he is now. But that's going to be the next video. So overall, the Peter Davison era stands up pretty well. It's got some bad stories, it's got some bad ideas, it's also got some of the very best of the entire series, and with an engaging and dynamic and interesting lead actor like Davison, who at no point ever seems bored, or ever seems like he's not trying his absolute best, even though he's been fairly honest about thinking he had a lot of crap to deal with in terms of scripts. He never let that show in his performance, and overall, the last really popular era of Doctor Who before things start going wrong. But that will be what I'll be talking about in the next video, the Colin Baker one. Maybe I'll be wearing a Colin Baker coat in my next video, you never know. But I hope you'll come back and join me then. Be seeing you.